I like new Pokemon just as much as the next guy, but what is going on with these absolute abominations of new Pokemon? The hype has worn off, and I am seeing these Paradox Pokemon for what they are. Two sets of one-dimensional gimmicks. Even worse, they make sense. I get what they are going for with these two design themes, but it is something that is unimaginative and lacking any and all depth. You're telling me that in the future Pokemon will no longer evolve or do any of the usual fun things that they do because they're all the same variety of robot, and in the past every Pokemon has long hair, angry eyes, or some sort of overgrown features? It feels so unlike Pokemon to make such a large number of characters that are fundamentally the same. Robots and freaks. And they don't even have real names. Iron Treads. Where even are the Treads? I'm not seeing any Treads here. And this is all such a disappointment because one of Pokemon's greatest strengths is designing characters that tell stories about themselves and the world around them. And to put a name to that strength, it's context. Pokemon move in certain ways, they have stories written about them, they have names and abilities that describe their capabilities. And that's why I think the Paradox Pokemon are such nothing characters in this game. They lack context. Alright, so what's that context I'm referring to? In Pokemon, there seem to be almost two worlds at this point, two games even. There's the more idealized, kind of in our heads world, the lore world. And then there's the actual world of the game, the physical, or I guess the digital, in this sense, world you actually explore. Alright, now I hate to pick on Tinkaton. She is probably the best Pokemon of this gen, but I'm going to anyway because it's a good example for the setup. The Pokedex describes in detail about how she's this kind of malevolent jokester who bats rocks at Corviknight just because she feels like it. Now that's incredible imagery. What an absolutely incredible picture they're painting. And great news for me, I can actually watch Pokemon behave and emote in the wild now, and that's something I can't wait to see. Alright. Yeah, she just sits there. That's a little tough. Tinkatuff even. And that brings us to the Pokemon that come from a world that we aren't even allowed to see. A Pokemon with no story info given, who also just sit there. And narratively, it is important that they do not show us the world of the future and the world of the past. I would say that they even go great lengths to avoid showing you anything about it. It's a big part of the mystery that the game spins for you. The only thing that we can see in the present are the creatures of the future and the past. Let the biology of the creatures aid you in filling in the gaps. Use your imagination to create the world for yourself. But those gaps are gigantic in this case. I really know so little outside of the fact that they're pissed. And oh, do I know that they're pissed. They make sure that you know that these creatures are pissed. To compare them to another similar bash, I want to invoke the imagery of the Ultra Beasts from Gen 7. Another group of questionable creatures from other worlds. For one, there's already a sense of variety here that I appreciate, but most importantly, context is given. Pokedex actually says something about them. They have both code names and actual names, and in the Ultra games, these Pokemon do things. The Ultra Beast wormholes have mini stories where you get to hang out and experience these creatures. And that's where the concrete failure of the Paradox Pokemon is. They don't tell you anything besides the image, and because the Scarlet and Violet overworld characters already don't do a ton, you don't get to see them exhibit any dynamic behavior in Area 0 that would give you any more clues. Maybe it's just a symptom of New Age Pokemon at large, but I don't want open world Pokemon games if the Pokemon are just gonna either sit there or get pissed when I walk by them. I want to see them do their thing and behave in interesting ways because I want to feel like I'm actually in this world and not just looking in on it. And then their names. They're terrible, terrible names. The names are just extensions of their physical looks. This one looks like they have big tusks. Write that down. This one has metal hands. Write that down. And then most importantly, the Pokedex entries. What in the world are these Pokedex entries? This is the central hub for biological information that you don't get to see with your own eyes in the games, and it besmirches these creatures. This Pokemon shares many similarities with Iron Hands, an object mentioned in a certain expedition journal. Well, you know, that's actually really interesting. A certain journal, you say? I'd really love to read it for myself. And yeah, I know that the Expedition Journal is the Scarlet or Violet book, depending on which one you're playing. I know that. So I went to the school, I picked up the Violet book, I gave it a good read. Now wait a minute, I read the Violet book? Yeah, that's right, even though the game doesn't tell you that it's there, and I had to head to GameFAQs to learn that I could, you are technically capable of reading the book at the beginning of the game if you want to. But intrigue cannot be generated by something that people just don't know exists. Alright, so yeah, I read it, and half of this book was written by a toddler. Most of the other half is DLC baiting, and until that DLC comes out, is technically just lying. And the rest of it is information that I either already know, or can simply see with my own eyes. So the weakness of the actual inclusion of the journal is that it's filled with things that I can already see for myself, or things that I am incapable of exploring. period. I cannot see that DLC until it comes out. Just because the biblically correct angel Pokemon mentioned in here looks pretty cool, that doesn't mean anything for me right now. It is part of the DLC. Now there is, however, some super cool environmental data included in the book, but the only Paradox Pokemon actually mentioned in the book is the Donphan version, depending on your version of the game. And the Pokedex said that this was the place to read about Iron Hands. Okay, so unless that's just classic Iron Hands disguising itself as Iron Treads and being called Iron Treads, then I don't know anything about it still. This whole group of Pokemon have been effectively robbed of context by this series of unfortunate circumstances. And you may be thinking, now wait a minute, there is an exception to this. And you're right, Miradon and Miradon are not subject to the factors I just described. They both have actual names that tell you something about them, they have at least a crumb of information in their Pokedex entries, and then they are seen doing their thing in bombastic fashion all over the place because box legendaries get dedicated cutscene movie time. I feel like I actually know about Miradon in the way that I would know about a real human being after experiencing the story with it, and that feels awesome. So I don't think that the problem may even necessarily lie with the designs themselves, but it absolutely revolves around the context that is given, which in this case is none. And you know, this feels like a really good time to address the straw man in the room. If these Pokemon are so bad, why don't you make better ones? And the great answer to that is that I don't have to. They already did. It feels like such an extreme missed opportunity, the gigantic number of unique, inspiring, and captivating Pokemon designs that are already themed off of past and future that are not present in the base content of Scarlet and Violet. 2 games with the titular themes of past and future. So if it was a rush job, why not just include the greats that we already had? There's the incredibly detailed and lore-intensive fossil Pokemon that are all over the other generations. There's the self-described ancient Pokemon, kind of like Relicanth. There's the primal Gen 4 ancient power evolution mons. There's Pokemon related to tools, technology, and machinery. There's even a couple of future-based Pokemon already. And then don't forget the Pokemon that are specifically related to the flow of time itself. You know, for games about past and future, they sure are working hard to forget their own past here. You know, one really cool idea I had when the themes dropped and some of the Pokemon were revealed was that Tyranitar was going to be a Scarlet exclusive and then Metagross is a Violet exclusive, you know. 2 pseudo-legendaries, there's 1 past, 1 future. Such a cool dichotomy of version exclusives, you know? But Metagross didn't make the cut. We got Robot Tyranitar though, so that's cool, I guess. I will say that mechanically in-game, the roles that a lot of these Pokemon have and their strengths and weaknesses are things that I really like. They've got new type combinations, new specializations of traits. These are all things that I consider as universally good for new Pokemon games. And in sheer terms of imagery, I am impressed. The individual designs are pretty appealing, but I think that ultimately that in an effort to create mystery surrounding a new wave of Pokemon, they just stripped away one too many layers of context. Even weirdo freak Pokemon like Deoxys and Chi-Yu have actual names, and they get explanations about something in their Pokedex entries that give them a semblance of an identity. Pokemon establish identity from these bits and pieces that are just not present with the Paradox Pokemon. They feel like incredibly cool action hero type characters that are just totally lacking in substance. All the information was stripped away, and so we're just left with the designs, and they feel empty in a really disappointing way. As much as I want to like them, I don't know anything about them. Alright, so that's my take on the Paradox Pokemon, and if you're still with me, thanks for watching this one. If you got thoughts on the matter, feel free to leave them below, and if you like to talk and you want to hear more from me, like this video and subscribe to the channel. That's all I got for you folks. I'll see you next time. Droomish out.